Chapter 17, Mass Meetings and Organization of a Permanent Society. 53. Mass Meetings. Distinction characteristics of a mass meeting. A mass meeting, as understood in parliamentary law, is a meeting of an unorganized group which, in a publicized or selectively distributed notice known as the call of the meeting, has been announced as called to take appropriate action on a particular problem or toward a particular purpose stated by the meeting sponsors, and as open to everyone interested in the stated problem or purpose, or to everyone within a specified sector of the population thus interested. To the extent that persons in the invited category are clearly identifiable, as, for example, registered voters of a particular political party or residents of a certain area, only such persons have the right to make motions, to speak, and to vote at the meeting, and none others need be admitted if the sponsors so choose. In any event, a mass meeting is convened, and those who attend are admitted upon the implied understanding that the sponsors, who have engaged the hall and assumed the expenses of promoting the meeting, have the right to have the proceedings confined to the overall object they have announced, but that the entire assembly, which is made up of persons whose help the sponsors are seeking, has the right to determine the action to be taken in pursuit of the stated object. With respect to this limitation on the right of attendance, or at least of participation, to persons in general sympathy with the announced object of the meeting, a mass meeting differs from a town meeting, a public forum, a lecture and discussion period type of meeting, or an open hearing held by an instrumentality of government. Organization of a mass meeting. Call of the meeting. The call or announcement of a mass meeting should specify the date, hour, and place of the meeting, its purpose, and, where applicable, who is invited to attend. It may also carry an identification of the sponsorship. Depending on the funds available and the people to be reached, the call can be given the desired publicity or distribution by whatever means are expected to be most effective. Announcements in the newspaper, or by radio or television, a website, mailings, posters, handbills, or flyers, or the like. Preparation. While a mass meeting should be conducted so as to accord the assembly its proper role in determining the outcome as described above, at the same time, a certain amount of planning by the sponsors is advisable to avoid the risk of the meeting's foundering. Before the meeting, the sponsors should agree on the following: whom they prefer for its chairman, who shall call the meeting to order and nominate their choice of chairman, who shall be nominated for secretary and by whom, what rules, if any, shall be proposed for adoption, and who shall make the initial talk explaining the purpose of the meeting. See also the detailed discussion of these steps below. The person chosen as chairman should be competent as a presiding officer and in sympathy with the object of the meeting, and it is an advantage if he personally knows many of the people who may attend. Depending on conditions, it is sometimes good policy to have a set of resolutions drafted in advance to submit to the meeting. Provision should also be made for occupying the time of the gathering in the event that resolutions are referred to a committee, or a committee is assigned to draft them. See below. The membership of a mass meeting. At a mass meeting, the membership consists of all persons in the invited category who attend. If no qualification was placed in the call, anyone who attends is regarded as a member and has the same rights as members in other assemblies: to make motions, to speak in debate, and to vote. If the call specified only a particular category of persons as invited, and if no attempt is made to screen the attendance at the door, anyone attending is presumed to be entitled to participate as a member, subject only to a subsequent identification to the contrary. If only those invited are admitted, anyone legitimately admitted has the rights of a member, and a person who is discovered to have entered fraudulently can be asked to leave. Rules in a mass meeting. Mass meetings frequently operate with no formally adopted rules, upon the assumption that the meeting will proceed according to the common parliamentary law, or that any differences of opinion on procedural questions can be resolved by citing a recognized parliamentary manual as persuasive, see 1.5 and 2.18 through 19. Depending on the character of the assembly, however, it may be wise to adopt a standard parliamentary authority, which can be done by a majority vote on the motion of a member, made, as prearranged by the sponsors, immediately after the election of the secretary. See below. Other rules are seldom necessary at a mass meeting unless it is desired to modify the general rules, 43.8 through 13, as to the allowable length and number of speeches. If such a modification is desired, the Assembly can adopt a standing rule covering the desired provisions at the same time as it adopts the parliamentary authority, or at a later time. In regard to the vote required for their adoption, amendment, rescission, or suspension, standing rules of a mass meeting or a series of mass meetings are similar to standing rules of convention as described in 59.32 through 37. In any event, without adoption at a mass meeting and regardless of what rules the meeting may adopt, the provisions of the call, specifying the meeting's purpose and those invited to attend it, have a force equivalent to bylaws of an organized society. That is, they define the subject matter within which motions or resolutions are in order and determine who have the right to participate as members. See also 53.7 and 53.14 through 17. This effect is a consequence of the sponsor's rights as explained in the first paragraph of this section. Any person at a mass meeting who, after being advised, persists in an obvious attempt to divert the meeting to a different purpose from that for which it was called, or who otherwise tries to disrupt the proceedings, becomes subject to the disciplinary procedures described in 61. Opening of the meeting and election of officers. A chairman and a secretary are in general the only officers required by a mass meeting. Their election takes place immediately after the meeting is called to order, a convenient method of electing them being by voice vote. As explained in 46, the first person nominated is voted on first under this method. In the interest of electing competent persons, it is therefore advisable that a name chosen by the sponsors be placed in nomination first for each office. Additional nominations can be made from the floor, and the Assembly can elect anyone it wishes, but except under unusual circumstances, it is likely to elect the apparent choices of the sponsors. Although the person who calls the meeting to order can call for nominations for chairman, and another can nominate the sponsor's choice, it is proper and simpler for one person to perform both functions. See nominations by the chair, 46.5. In the latter case, at the scheduled hour shortly thereafter, this person steps to the chair and, after waiting or signaling for quiet, says, "The meeting will come to order. I nominate Mr. A for chairman of this meeting." After any additional nominations from the floor, the chair puts the question on each name in succession, beginning with the one he placed in nomination himself, as described under Viva Voce election 46:37 through 41. When the chairman of the meeting has been elected, he takes the chair and may say a few words of acknowledgement if he wishes, after which he says, "Nominations are now in order for secretary of this meeting." The person agreed to nominate the sponsor's choice for secretary should promptly place that name in nomination. Members can also make additional nominations. The secretary is elected viva voce in the same manner as the chairman. When the secretary has been elected, he takes his seat near the chairman and keeps a record of the proceedings. If additional officers are desired, they can be elected in the same way. Transaction of business specified to the call. Explanation of the meeting's purpose. When the elections are completed, the chair says, "The secretary will now read the call of this meeting." The reading of the call should include the names of the sponsors. The chair then recognizes the person who is to explain the purpose of the meeting more fully, or the chairman gives this presentation himself if he has been selected to do so. Resolutions to accomplish the purpose. After the purpose of the meeting has been explained, it is in order for a member to offer a resolution or a series of resolutions to accomplish this purpose. Or, if believed more suitable to the conditions, it can be moved that a committee be appointed to draft such resolution or resolutions. If the plan is for the resolution or resolutions to be offered immediately after the initial explanation, they can have been prepared in advance, with double-spaced reproduced copies for distribution to those in attendance, and a pre-selected member can now move their adoption. For considerations to be observed in the drafting of resolutions, see the framing of main motions 10:9 through 25. After another member has seconded the resolution or resolutions, the chair states the question on them. They are open to debate and amendment, and the Assembly proceeds to consider them, the entire procedure being as described in 4, and for a series of resolutions in 10:25. In stating the question, the chair should make sure that those present understand the means by which the Assembly can modify the proposals contained in the resolution, see 10:29 through 30, and should provide such explanations as he believes necessary. With reference to the proposal of substitutes or other amendments, or alternative resolutions if those first introduced are rejected, any motion within the scope of the meeting's purpose as announced in the call is in order, but any motion outside of or contrary to that purpose is not in order. For example, if the announced purpose of a mass meeting is to oppose the construction of a proposed airport in a particular location, any motion or resolution directed toward preventing the airport's construction can be brought up at the meeting, but a motion whose effect would be to endorse the airport construction project is not in order. The rules governing the assignment of the floor in debate, as given in 42 or 43, are generally applicable. In a mass meeting, however, there is no appeal from the chair's decision in assigning the floor. The rule requiring the Assembly's permission to speak for longer than 10 minutes at a time in debate on pending questions applies if the meeting has adopted no other rule. Resolutions drafted by a committee appointed at the meeting. If resolutions have not been prepared in advance, a committee should be appointed to the meeting to draft them. Such a procedure is appropriate when it is believed advisable to obtain expressions of opinion from persons who attend the meeting before attempting to frame resolutions. In a small mass meeting, the chair at his discretion can permit those present to make brief statements of this nature after the initial explanation of the meeting's purpose and before the motion to appoint the committee is made. In that case, the chair should specify the time to be allowed each member, which is a matter entirely under the chair's control unless the meeting has adopted a special rule, since the procedure is in effect a relaxation of the general parliamentary rule prohibiting speeches when no question is pending. See 4, 7 through 8. In any event, the same kind of discussion can also take place in regular debate on the motion to appoint the committee, since it is relevant to the committee's instructions to draft resolutions expressing the sense of the meeting on the specified subject as explained below. The person who is to make the motion to appoint the committee should be agreed upon by the sponsors in advance, as well as the matter of whether preliminary discussion is to be permitted before the motion is made. The motion may be made in a form such as the following. Member obtaining the floor. I move that a committee of 5 be appointed by the chair to draft resolutions expressing the sense of this meeting on, and then the subject for which the meeting was called. Second. If this is a made motion, since it is made when no question is pending, it is debatable and amendable and can have any subsidiary motion applied to it. In a mass meeting, it is usually advisable to have all committees appointed by the chair, assuming that the chairman has been well chosen. If the Assembly prefers a different method of appointment, however, the procedures that can be followed are described in 50. When the committee has been appointed, it should immediately retire and prepare the resolution or resolutions. During the committee's absence from the hall, the assembly can attend to any other business related to the object of the meeting, or it can occupy the time in listening to talks and engaging in forums or seminar-type discussions, or in watching a relevant film, or it can recess. 20. If the assembly does not recess and the chair sees the committee return to the room, he asks as soon as the pending business is disposed of, or as soon as the person giving the talk closes, etc., is the committee that was appointed to draft resolutions prepared to report. When the committee chairman has answered affirmatively, the chair says, if there is no objection, the meeting will now hear the committee's report. The chair recognizes the chairman of the committee appointed to draft resolutions. See treatment of unanimous consent, 458 through 63. If the chair does not notice the committee's return, the committee chairman at the first opportunity obtains the floor and says, the committee appointed to draft resolutions is prepared to report. Unless objection is then made, the chair directs the committee chairman to proceed. If anyone objects, the chair puts the question on the reports being received. See second bulleted item in 5128. The committee chairman, addressing the presiding officer of the assembly, presents the report as follows. Madam President, the committee appointed to draft resolutions recommends, and on behalf of the committee I move, the adoption of the following resolution, or resolutions, and then reading them off. On the presentation of this report, the committee is discharged automatically. The chair then states the question on the resolutions, and they are considered in the same way as summarized above for the case in which resolutions are offered by a member from the floor. See also 51. Adjournment. In a mass meeting, unless the time for another meeting has already been set, by adopting a motion to fix the time to which to adjourn, 22, or by adopting temporary rules as described below, a motion to adjourn is not in order while business is pending. See 21.2 and 21.3.3. When the business for which the mass meeting was called has apparently been completed and no question is pending, someone should move to adjourn, or the chair can call for such a motion. Unless the time has been set for another meeting, the adoption of this motion dissolves the assembly, so that, as explained in 21, it is a main motion and can be debated and amended just as any other main motion. An example of an amendment to a main motion to adjourn might be to add the words until 8 o'clock Wednesday evening, which would thereby include in the motion a provision to set a time for another meeting. In cases where it is desired to close the meeting before its business has been completed, the rules are as follows. A. If the time for another meeting has already been set, the motion to adjourn is privileged, just as in a meeting of an ordinary permanent society, and is subject to the rules given in 21. B. If no time has been set for another meeting and the question is pending, a motion to fix the time to which to adjourn should first be moved and adopted, after which the privileged motion to adjourn, 21, is in order. The procedure is as shown in 22:17 through 20. C. If no time has been set for another meeting and no question is pending, any member can move, for example, to adjourn until 8 o'clock Wednesday evening, which is a main motion. When a motion to adjourn a mass meeting has been adopted and no time is set for another meeting, the chair says, the ayes have it and the meeting is adjourned. The announcement in effect declares the assembly dissolved. If a time for an adjourned meeting has been set, on the other hand, either previously or by means of a provision included in the motion to adjourn, the chair announces the result by saying, the ayes have it and this meeting is, or stands, adjourned until 8 o'clock Wednesday evening. Before declaring the adjournment or even taking a vote on adjourning, the chair should make sure that all necessary announcements have been made. Series of mass meetings and temporary society. If more than one mass meeting is necessary to achieve a certain objective, or if the group is working toward the formation of an organized society, a temporary organization to continue beyond a single mass meeting may become necessary. If so, the officers elected at the first meeting are designated chairman pro tem and secretary pro tem, although the words pro tem are not used in addressing these officers. If a permanent society is the aim of the group, the temporary officers serve until the election of permanent officers. If special rules were not appointed at the first meeting, a committee on the rules can be appointed to recommend a few rules, providing for the hour and place for holding the meetings, the number and length of speeches allowed, and if the general rules given in 43, 8 through 13 are not satisfactory, and a work on parliamentary law to be used as a parliamentary authority. If such rules specify periodic dates on which meetings are to be held, each meeting is a separate session, 8, as in an ordinary society. But if the time of each succeeding meeting is set at the previous meeting or is at the call of the chair, this entire series of meetings constitutes a single session.